Afternoon, America. Brian James Blam here. I want to welcome you back to another episode of What the Fuck's Up. I'm here with Shelby Bush of We the People Arizona Alliance, one of the most effective election integrity organizations in the United States of America, right? And she's standing here next to my Eagle friend, which you can purchase for $300 and help the cause if you would like. But basically, I want to talk to Shelby Bush at We the People Arizona Alliance because attached to this video is going to be a project that we've been working on for a very long time. And this project is a deep dive into Susan Spalding, the national security state, and basically how they have helped hijack our elections and what we know as democracy in the United States of America, right? Democracy. We the people rule. Contrary to what we're called, Adrian Fontes, Stephen Richer always labeling us fascists, but you got to ask yourself, which side has the tendency to autocratic or dictatorial rule, right? And that would be Adrian Fontes and the national security state folks like Stephen Richer. Because don't forget, Stephen Richer is a CISA subject matter expert. But what we're going to talk about, I like to do these boards, right? You see me do these boards, dividing up the government, based on our Constitution, who has what power, what level of government, right? And so what I want to talk to you about is the growth, the rapid growth of the national security state, especially after the election of Donald J. Trump. When was he first elected?
2016.
2016. Have you been hearing all of the stories coming out, especially, who's that one guy, Mike Benz? Have you been following Mike Benz's tweets?
Oh, yeah.
He'd been talking about how within 7 days of Donald J. Trump's election to the United States presidency, these organizations, folks, began to war game how to get rid of Donald Trump. And so what we're going to be talking about is sort of how this progresses to the 2020 election and where we're at now, folks. And so the national security state, Shelby, are they embedded in all of our state executive agencies?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. This has been made clear from press conferences, from things that have been disclosed, and from the fact that many of the people working in these agencies that have been elected to represent us all have deep ties into all of these agencies.
And that would include the county recorder, Stephen Richer?
Absolutely.
Right, and Adrian Fontes, did you watch, as Secretary of State, did you watch Adrian Fontes give his testimony the other day in front of a Maricopa County Superior Court?
Testimony?
Well, where he testified to the absolute number of briefings they receive all the time from the national security agencies. Okay?
Yes.
So the national security agencies then have basically embedded themselves up and down the executive branch of government, correct?
That's correct.
Have they played a role in our judicial branch of government?
Absolutely. They've been advising the justices. They've been advising the heads of all of our courts. They've been going in and holding presentations. I believe they're even going to some of the judicial conferences.
All right. And so are you familiar with what Susan Spalding created in 2018? An organization that both censors speech and regulates our election infrastructure?
Absolutely, and it was all built around the Russia collusion concept that we know now was completely fabricated by these same agencies.
Okay, so we have Susan Spalding. I believe she was Undersecretary of the National Security Agency at the time, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and did she in 2019 run a deep dive on our judicial branch of government?
Yes, she did.
Okay. What was the result in the state of Arizona?
Well, the state of Arizona issued an order to form a committee that was basically a free speech watchdog over anybody and everybody who spoke up actively about the elections. And they did it under the guise that we were going to present disinformation to diminish the trust in the judiciary, and that this was critical in protecting America and Americans from not only themselves, but these Russian operatives that were coming into America.
And so this was all the Russian disinformation narrative.
Yes.
Did these briefings have anything, and do current briefings have anything to do with our elections and what's going to take place in our elections?
They all have to do with our
They
elections.
all do. So this is like, isn't it? And now you guys, We the People Arizona Alliance, sue the government a lot, right?
We do.
Namely,
yes.
Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer.
That is correct.
All right. So if these people are going into the judicial branch of government and briefing them, isn't that really the same thing as the county recorder, who we know is a subject matter expert for these people? Isn't that the same thing as him going to talk to the judges in advance of you suing them?
Yes, it's an absolute complete corruption and disservice of our judiciary,
Uh-huh.
creating a system that's unfair and unbalanced because you have undue influence from the very agencies that we as an organization and as the people are trying to protect the public from. These agencies are going in and telling the courts how they must rule and providing them their own fake narrative ahead of time to prohibit us from making any kind of valuable moves in the court.
All right, so we know the national security state here did a deep dive. Now, we know there are a bunch of national left-wing lawyers and law firms, don't we? Can you name any?
Well, Perkins Coie
Oh my
is the
God.
first one that crosses my mind.
Perkins Coie. Are they a little bit on the coy side?
A little
Right.
bit, yes.
Perkins Coie now, these Perkins Coie lawyers were making out with, wasn't the FBI in the broom closets of their own law firms?
Absolutely.
Right. Do you
Very
know,
same address.
right. And so, do you know if has any bar association ever done anything about that?
Not at all.
Not at all. All right. Who used to work at Perkins Coie, a big name leftist lawyer?
Oh, let me think. Mark Elias?
Mark Elias. All right, so Mark Elias. So we have Mark Elias, used to be a big name Perkins Coie lawyer, left, went out on his own. And now what does Mark Elias and Perkins Coie do? Were either of these law firms involved with, say, for example, Lake v. Hobbs?
Yes, they were.
Which one?
Perkins Coie actually works on the defense side for the Secretary of State.
Right.
For Katie Hobbs at the time during the Lake v. Hobbs trial.
Right. And then Mark Elias, who did he represent?
Mark Elias represented, I believe it was the Secretary of State himself, or not
Katie Hobbs.
Katie Hobbs as the Secretary of State. So it was Perkins Coie as her as a candidate and individual, and it was Mark Elias in her official capacity as the Secretary of State.
All right, so we know these two organizations that are very active in election-related litigation throughout the United States have very deep ties and relationship with Hillary Clinton, the national security state, Susan Spalding, and all of these individuals, correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Not only that, we have to make mention while we're on the topic, Mark Elias is the very same attorney that was going throughout the state of Arizona and many other states, intimidating and threatening boards of supervisors and county recorders in their various capacities to ensure that they did not involve themselves in the investigations of the American public.
Right. Okay, so we have these people then who come in and defend cases in our courts. We know they're friends with the national security state. We have the national security state that's been running up and down the judicial branch of government with Susan Spalding, right? And when she does this, she does it in the guise of working for a private company, right? But she is fully clothed. She's fully clothed. Just like when Adrian Fontes stood behind the podium at that state bar presentation he gave for credit for CLE. I actually got 3 fucking credits for that. And it was the biggest waste of money I ever heard in my life because it was all just a bunch of leftist propaganda where he's calling people like me, actually me, a fascist and whatnot, because we have the courage to challenge what they are doing to our elections, okay? But now, are these people in the national security state, are they affiliated with the bar associations?
Oh, many of them are affiliated. I mean, we've got David Byers, who's actually from our judiciary system, right? Sitting on the American Bar Association right beside Susan Spalding.
Fuck. Wow, that's not possible, is it?
It's absolutely truthful. You can go on the American Bar Association website and it will show it. Also featured on that very same page, we must note, is Bill Kristol. For people who don't understand who Bill Kristol is, He is the billionaire behind the big Defend Democracy movement
Right.
that has been huge at influencing all of these agencies and the American public about the dangers of questioning our elections.
Right.
He sits side by side with the National Security State, Susan Spalding, and David Byers from our judicial
Right.
branch, as they make decisions that affect licenses of our attorneys.
Well, how many real branches of government does America have left? You don't have to.
It should be three.
It should
It
be
really
abundantly
should be
clear,
three,
right?
yes.
Okay, and so we know the state bar associations then take a lot of their direction from the American Bar Association, which promulgates rules they push down and they recommend them to the courts and whatnot. And so
That's correct.
we have, these major law firms. Now, if I'm an attorney and I go into Superior Court and I challenge, say, a Democrat candidate or a Democrat rule, what's been happening through the United States of America when I challenge these people, right? Are there any organizations out there designed to, hinder people's ability to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you see attorneys such as yourself, I mean, you're a prime example, but there's many other all across the country, including Kurt Olson and others. When you start challenging their apparatus and their system of government that they have put into place, the state bar associations are going after these attorneys, threatening to take their licenses, sanctioning them ungodly amounts of money, which
Right.
in many cases is not precedented.
Right. All right, so basically what we have the national security state running up and down our judicial branch of government. And if anybody wants to see it, you can go back in time on my Twitter feed. It's all there. Because I play Susan Spalding in her own words. I play the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court in his own words talking about keeping Russian disinformation out of our courts. Right? But then you have Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, big friends of the national security state, Hillary Clinton, and all of these people. I don't know. Have you ever seen it? I draw the political parties on the board where I say you have these two political parties, and then you have this little group in each one, and they're the left and the right wing of the bird.
Correct.
The
Yes.
National Security Association members of the party, which would include our current board of supervisors, the county recorder, the ghost of John McCain, I call it, on one side, and Hillary Clinton on the other.
Absolutely.
But you have all of these friends who are tied together, friends and colleagues, and they have one mission, and that mission is to get rid of Donald Trump, right?
That is correct.
And then if you have the courage to stand up, is this organization one of their friends?
Absolutely. 65 Project, the board and the funding, again, ironically, comes from the same players that are tied to people like Bill Kristol,
Right.
who is sitting on the American Bar Association, is funding a massive left-wing security state effort to disbar
Okay.
public attorneys.
So the 65 Project then makes claims to the state bar associations, which then take action against attorneys who bring claims like I have brought on behalf of Carrie Lake and others in superior courts around the United States, correct?
That's correct.
And so this entire loop, right? Do you feel like these people are trying to disenfranchise We the People Arizona Alliance and deny them access to the judiciary?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. They're trying to deny us the opportunity to find an attorney with courage to represent us. They're trying to deny us any kind of voice, evidentiary hearings, anything related to exposing this apparatus within the judicial is shut down before it even begins most times.
All right, and so basically what I'm attaching to this video is this multi-page effort that we've looked at to expose the ties between all of these agencies and all of these key players. So if you want to read it, I strongly encourage you to read it, because what's taking place in the United States of America is not democracy, folks, where we the people make the decisions. It is a form of fascism, where those in governance have a strong tendency to autocratic and dictatorial rule. And what do you have to say to voters today? What should they do today to ensure that we can put an end to this and so that we can reinstitute civilian leadership over our armed forces and the national security agencies. What do people need to do today?
Well, I think they paved the map to what we need to do today, and that is show up in mass forces at the poll today, if you haven't done it already, at the poll on Monday, or worst case scenario on Tuesday, but you gotta get out and you gotta vote for Donald Trump. Because if these agencies wanna take him down so much that they're willing to stake all of their reputations and completely corrupt the American system to keep him out of office, that's who we want defending democracy.
Yes. So what she just told you, if you're not watching and you live in Maricopa County or in any other state of this union, is to get off of your fucking couch and you take your ass to the polls today or the first available opportunity you have, and vote. Because you can see, you could be blind and see what they are doing to your elections throughout the United States of America. I've been talking about Pennsylvania. A fourth county now has been added to this massive investigation of this idiot from the state of Arizona who has direct access to Arizona's voter registration records. You need to change this system, and the only way you can do it is by turning out en masse. Get off your ass and vote. If you want to support our cause, you can give it Give, Send, Go, Election Integrity Now, or you can go buy a piece of art at rebelartllc.art. We thank you. Thank you for being here, Shelby.
Absolutely. Can I close with something
Close.
before you do? Thomas Jefferson said, when government fears the people, there is liberty. But when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. Folks, we are living under tyranny. They fear Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the people. We can bring back liberty.
And with that, I say peace.